Well, hello there friends, and welcome back to the Marley Bird YouTube channel and video 3 of the 3-in-1 hand warmer stitch along. I am so glad that you are joining me to make your very first pair of either fingerless mitts or convertible mitts or full-on mittens. By this point in the project, you should have completed your cuff, the hand of your hand warmer, and the thumb gusset. If you have not started yet, it is not too late. Simply download that free pattern. I've put a link in the video description box right down there below, and then watch video 1 and 2, and you'll be right here to get started with video 3 in no time. Once your homework is complete, it's time to carry on and decide whether you are going to make fingerless mittens, full mittens, or convertible mittens. And let's take a look at where we left off last time and go to the next step of this project. Okay, everybody, obviously you can see the colors have changed since video 2. I noticed that the colors I was using in video 2 were just a little bit too close together. So when I left you, you were about at that point in your project. You had completed the hand and the thumb gusset stitches were placed on a holder. It's at that point you would carry on with the written instructions, making either the fingerless mitten or the full-on mitten, or get purl bumps put into place for some convertible mittens. I'm going to assume that you guys can follow along with the pattern at this point, whether you're making the fingerless mittens or the full-on mittens, because it's simply just following the color changes as normal and then either working the 1x1 rib for the fingerless mitts or working some simple decreases for the top of the mitten for the regular mitten. Most of you are here to learn how to do the convertible mitten. And the thing is, once you get past these first couple rows, it's easy breezy. It's like, oh, okay, this makes sense. But it's usually those first couple rows or rounds that you need a little bit of help with. So that's what I'm here for. You'll notice on this sample, I've already worked up the 1 round of purl bumps that you were told to do if you were making the convertible mittens. And that was right here in the pattern, where if you were working along and making the fingerless mitts and you wanted to turn them into convertible, you did 1 round of purls, whether it was the right hand or left hand determined where you place those purls. But then once you finished that, you jumped into a knit 1 purl 1 ribbing for about 1 inch. So that's where I am here. And this is my round of purls, and then this is my 1x1 ribbing, and then I bound off in pattern. Okay, so the purls are placed in such a way that this is the right hand. See how those purls would be on the top of my hand here, and if it were the left hand, my purls would be over here on this side, so that way the flap would be on the top of my hand. Does that make sense? So if you're questioning where your purls are, that's the best way to check, is set it down, put your hand on top, and make sure that those purl bumps would be on this portion of your hand. It's at this point that we want to go ahead and we're essentially going to cast on stitches and pick up stitches to begin working a second top of the mitten that can be flipped, right? It's pretty easy stuff. What I have done is I have cast on 14 stitches onto a double pointed needle, okay? So the instructions say to cast on 14 stitches. And we know that we have 22 stitches that are with purls. So we have all of those purl bumps. So with our 14 stitches, we will carry on, and I did use the long tail cast on. I will carry on with my working yarn from the long tail cast on and then pick up and knit purl bumps, the 22 purl bumps. And I will end up with the same number of stitches as I normally have in my pattern, only now I have a new set of sort of like my cast on row or my foundation round because I have picked up stitches and now they're going to be attached to this. It's really quite simple. So I've cast on the 14 stitches. All I do now is take my needle, whether you're working with circulars or double points, it doesn't really matter. And you have this nice purl bump, right? We have this purl bump right there. I'm going to take my needle and go underneath that purl bump. And I'm going to bring my needle with all of the stitches on it right next to it. And I'm just going to purl, or not purl, I'm sorry. I'm going to knit into that purl bump and pull up a stitch. And then I go to the next purl bump and knit and pull up a stitch. Now, one thing I do like to do is I will usually tuck my ribbing that I completed with the fingerless mitt portion, I tuck it down and it makes it easier to see those bumps. Can you see that? It makes it so much easier to see the bumps. So I will just carry on going into my purl bump and knitting it. And I just make sure that I'm going to get 22 of them separated around my needles, and then I will join to work in the round and jump back in pattern with my chart. It is that easy, you guys. And what this has done is it will attach my flap of my mitten top to my work without having to do any extra work. So I'll get to this point and then I would probably pick up another needle and then carry on casting, or not casting on, but picking up and knitting stitches. And as long as you have the same number as you cast on, so you pick up 22, you'll be good. Once you get all 22 stitches on your needles and you have your 14 stitches that you started with, we're essentially going to kind of start off just like we did in the mitten when we were starting in the round. Again, I like to tuck that ribbing out of the way so I don't have to worry about it. But we want this last stitch that we picked up and knit to meet up with that first stitch we cast on, and see how we're now back into the round. And what will happen here is you will work in a ribbing pattern across these stitches here, the 14 stitches. You're going to keep those in ribbing, and then you're going to jump back into your color positioning around these stitches. So you already know, now obviously you've picked up all, and so it's all one color. This kind of gets hidden in with the flap. So this is, you've just completed all 4 rows of the previous color change. So this is where I would start off here, where I was with color A for the first 2, color B for the second 2, so on and so forth. Now I'm going to let you know that no matter where you put your purl bumps, I mean, it doesn't really matter. I could have put my purl bumps down here. I could have put my purl bumps higher. That part doesn't matter. And as far as whether you start with color A or start with color B, do what works best for your mitten. So don't be reliant on the pattern. Always look at what's going on with what's in front of you. If you've already completed your color B and it's time to stack color A, but the mitten pattern says something different, do what is good for your project, because you know how it's supposed to work out. It's pretty simple like that, right? But it's at this point you would just carry on. Now here's the tricky thing. This first round, when we go across the ribbing portion, is not that big of a deal because we don't have a second color to worry about, right? So I'm just going to jump into my knit 1 purl 1 ribbing across these 14 stitches. All right. And I would do this for 3 rounds. I'm essentially getting some ribbing on the bottom of my convertible mitten, so that way it lays nice. But this first round, I don't have to worry too much about color B. But on round 2 and 3, I have to carry my color B from this point over here to this point over here. So I will want to make sure I'm weaving in as I go. Or here's a side note, and this is what you guys get for being a part of this video. If you wanted to make this a corrugated rib, where maybe you knit with one color, purl with a different color, so that way you have both colors working across, you absolutely could do that as well. That's a different way to work this pattern, and it would be equally beautiful. So I'm just doing those first 2, and this is where I would bring in my color B, and I would just jump in to my color changes once again, just like I was doing before. You guys know how this works. I mean, you've put in so much time at this point doing this, so you know how to do this. And we're essentially just going to work these colors in the round just like normal until we have our mitten top as tall as we want it to, and it's time to decrease. So yeah, in the pattern, it tells you precisely how many rounds to do the mitten top. But this is where you guys get to be, you know, a little creative. If you need it a little bit shorter, you can make it shorter. If you need it a little bit longer to accommodate like maybe some longer fingers, you can make it a little bit longer. Don't be a slave to the pattern. Make this work best for you. So here I am. I'm back to where my ribbing starts. Okay, y'all. So this is the part I was telling you that you're going to have to tuck in or weave in as you go. But we already know how to do that because we did that with the thumb. So if you wanted to do corrugated, you could do that where you would knit one and then you would bring one over and then you could purl one with another color, right? Bring that back and then maybe we knit with this one and then we purl with this one. Right? So we could do that and then you get a really cool sort of look at the bottom. You could do that or you could just use your color A like I did in the sample. And then when it came to your knits, you know, just tuck it in when you're working on a knit and then that carries your yarn across. All right. Does that make sense? So it would carry on around the back. I actually really like this option where you use color B for the purls and color A for the knits. I think that would be a really cool look. If you want to give that a whirl, I encourage you to do so. But this is basically it, y'all. Like this is the excitement of, oh, I knit that one. I wasn't supposed to knit that one. This is the excitement of working the convertible mitten. Like this is as easy as it gets, right? It's just, I've connected my stitches and I'm treating it as if it's a whole new round. Yeah. And so as I move on, I just carry on with my stitch pattern, just like I have before. And I keep going, like I said, I keep going until this convertible portion is as tall as I want it to be. And then I just do my shaping, and I do my shaping just with my color A. So I don't have to do any sort of color work with the shaping, which makes it even easier. And I know all of you can do that. So all of you who joined me here to see how this convertible mitten top works, you are good with that. Now, for those of you who want to know more about how the thumb works, you're like, okay, great. I got that, Marley. I know how to pick up the stitches, but now what about that thumb? How do I get those thumb stitches to go? That's pretty darn easy. Let me show you how to do the thumb. All right, let's talk about the thumb. I went ahead and took off my little start there so that we could easily see the thumb. And the first thing we want to do is we want to get these stitches that we have on a holder on some needles. Okay, so I like to take my needle and get these stitches on needles. So I'm going to do that. I'm just going to space them around some needles, and you could use the 3 needles, you could use 4 needles, whatever works best for you. Remember, you have 10 stitches on a holder. Okay. So I'm going to leave my scrap yarn in place. The reason I do that is, say that something goes wrong on this first couple rounds, I have a point that I can rip back to. Okay, so I'm going to let my scrap yarn act as a lifeline in this example. All right, y'all. So the first thing that the pattern says to do is knit these 10 stitches. So I'm going to come over here, and you should be knitting these stitches with color A, but so that you guys can see this in the video, I'm going to use my color B so that you can easily see how this works. So I'm going to just knit around these first 10 stitches. And again, I want to say this again, just because people will be like, why is she using the different color? I'm using a different color just so you can better see these stitches in the video. Make sure you don't work into your lifeline. I accidentally did that once and it's no fun. All right, so, all right, once you get all of those stitches knit, this is where we are going to essentially pick up and knit 2 stitches right here in the area that we joined with. Okay, so I'm just going to stick my needle in. I mean, no rhyme or reason has to be had with this, guys. Just stick your needle in to where it doesn't create a hole and pop out and create a stitch. Just very similar to what you did with the convertible. I'm going to do that same thing over here. I'm going to kind of, it looks like I have 2 loops on there, but that's all right. I think that'll look just fine as I finish it. Maybe if I can bring that out. I can't get that out. Try that again. always fun to do things live, right? Okay, so now I have 12 stitches worked around my thumb. And what I want to do now with these 12 stitches is I'm going to knit them until my thumb measures about 2.5 inches. Now, just like with the mitten or the convertible mitten, that is totally customizable. If you want it to be smaller, you can make it smaller. If you want it taller, you can make it taller. If you wanted to do your thumb like a flip top thumb, you could do that as well. You could bind off some stitches and then create a flip top. You could do that if you want to. If you wanted to make it a fingerless thumb, you could work it up a certain distance and then bind off all your stitches. Totally up to you. Once your thumb has reached 2.5 inches, you'll simply do similar decreases as you do with the mitten top with your knit two togethers and so on and so forth. Once all of your decreases are done, the top of your thumb looks a little something like this. You will thread your string and you would thread it through all of the remaining stitches and pull it tight like a drawstring and then weave in your tail. You want to do the same thing with the top of your fingerless mitt or your mitt. It's the same sort of process, right? See how all those stitches come together? You draw them together like a drawstring, and then you weave your tail in. So what you're left with here is a fingerless mitt that is a little bit longer than the mitten top, so that way it tucks under it. It's already attached right down there at the bottom. Pretty easy stuff. You can see here, I decided to weave in along the way on these here, and then I jumped into my stitch pattern all the way around my mitten just like I normally would. As I said before, if you want to do a corrugated where you change the color every stitch across the round for these ribbing portion, that would be really nice. This part right here, this is the way the pattern is written to give it this particular height. If you need more stitches to make it taller, you absolutely can. If you need fewer, you absolutely can. Totally customizable. Same thing for the thumb. What you will notice with the convertible and the mitten is they're the same thing. I mean, look at that. It's the same thing. It's the same number of rows. It's all that is the same. It's just that with the convertible, we were like, oh, we're going to take a break. We're going to finish this and then we're going to come back and pick up some stitches down here and then make the top of the mitten. So it's basically the same process. See how that works? Okay. The main thing I want you to take away from this is that any pattern can be made into a convertible pattern. All you need to do is either make a row of purl bumps and pick up and knit stitches like I showed you, or you can even have your completed fingerless mitten done and then go back and just pick up stitches along a row that where you want the flap to connect to, and then knit stitches from there and create a flap. I mean, it's really super easy. The technique and the construction is the same. So that's everything you need to know to complete your mittens, your convertible mittens, or just some fingerless mittens. Whichever way you choose, I know that they will be a hit. I cannot wait to see your finished projects. Be sure to share with me on social media. Use hashtag #MarleyBird so that way I can find your project and smash your like button. That's it from me, everybody. I'll talk to you again very soon. Bye.